Hello, my name is Dr. Dan Jones, and in happier times I give lectures and talks to Viking passengers, cruise ship passengers, usually on the history and archaeology of the places we're going to visit. But not this time. This time we're going to have a Christmas alphabet. It's 26 aspects of Christmas, more or less connected with Christmas. And we're going to start with A is for archangel. Now you get plenty of angels at Christmas, but I wanted to introduce you to the concept of the archangel because heaven is very well organized, you know. The angels are split up into cohorts, and each cohort has a leader, an archangel. Here are the names of the archangels. And you'll see that each one ends in El, which is one of the ancient Hebrew names for God himself. The chief of the archangels is Michael. That's why you get churches dedicated to St. Michael and all angels. St. Michael, who will slay the devil at the end of days. Now, when you think about it, being immortal, angels have no need to be male or female, so they are invariably addressed as males. But there is one very slight exception, one slip of the stylus, one slip of the pen, and that is this person, the Archangel Gabriel. Now, Gabriel brought the good news to Mary that she was going to have a child in time for Christmas. And she had also gave a message to Elizabeth, Mary's cousin, that she was going to also have a child, John the Baptist. So perhaps it's this association with ladies and babies that from time to time, almost by accident, Gabriel is allowed to be a lady. B is brandy for the parson. Brandy has been a great party reviver for many, many years, has it not? But in the 18th century, the British government put a severe tax on various luxuries, brandy, silk, tobacco. As a result, the whole of southern England, from Cornwall right up to Kent, became one long smuggler's haunt. Dymchurch. Things have changed very little in the last couple of 100 years. And there is a wonderful poem by Kipling about this. It has a refrain. Watch the wall, my darling, while the gentlemen go by. Some years ago, Walt Disney made a couple of films about Dr. Syn, the Reverend Dr. Christopher Syn, the vicar of Dymchurch, who was a stern Orthodox preacher, but he was also, at the same time, the leader of the smugglers. He was a well-known smuggler. When Walt Disney came to make these films, he visited a nearby church, or his people visited the nearby church of St. Clement in Old Romney, and asked the parishioners whether they could film in there. Oh yes, said the parishioners, yes, you go ahead. But on the understanding that you return the church to how it looked in the 18th century. So now, on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, you can worship in St. Clement's in these beautiful box pews, courtesy of Walt Disney. I had a little look about some expensive brandy, and this is the most expensive I could find at the time, a cognac, a croisette. It sold in 2011 for $130,000. 1858 vintage. It's probably undrinkable now. I don't know. C is for Christmas Day in the workhouse. See, in the 14th century, the Black Death struck Europe. At least a third of the people died, and possibly as much as a half of the population. Everything was in chaos. Things were very bad. The church, led by Brother Cadfael, no doubt, tried to do what help it could. But in a century or so, that silly King Henry VIII decided to close the monasteries. And the problem became very acute. There were sturdy beggars. They were actually just men going from place to place looking for work. And normally they were whipped out of town. And some of them, as you can see in the corner, were hung or hanged. His daughter, Elizabeth, who had many of his faults, but had one redeeming feature: she could take in good advice when she heard it. Her parliament created an Act for the Relief of the Poor, 1597, 16th century. Each parish was responsible for its poor and its indigent. There are many dark aspects of English history, but this is one of the brighter parts. From the 16th century, nobody in England should starve or die through inclement weather. Think what the rest of the world was like in the 16th century, 17th century. Now, as the years went by, as the centuries went on, nobody ever questioned that we needed a poor law, but there were constant complaints that it cost too much, it's too expensive. So this was exacerbated by the growth of the industrial poor, with the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. The poor, the number of poor and the quality of poor grew all the time, and the strain on the unions, the parishes, became so much that in 1834 the government created the Poor Law Amendment Act. Under this, all the parishes should join together in unions, and each union should have a workhouse, and all relief should be given in the workhouse. And it was to be made as austere, terrible as possible. Men and women were split up by husbands and wives, and everything was very dull. They achieved their purpose. There was a great stigma about going to the workhouse. People did anything to keep out, which was the aim. And there was something called the doctrine of lesser eligibility, which meant that anybody in the workhouse should not be better off than anybody on the outside who was in employment. In the early 19th century, the Woolwich Union wrote to head office, as it did, as it had to do regularly. It sent the menus that they were proposing for the next period up to head office for approval. And for Christmas Day, they were going to add a tiny piece of Christmas pudding. Back came a very, very angry reply. There are people out there at work who can't afford Christmas pudding, so Christmas Day in the workhouse, these poor people would have to be without any Christmas pudding whatsoever. D is for Down Under. A few years ago, my wife and I were privileged to be in Australia and to see some relatives for Christmas, a sweltering Christmas. But still, an enjoyable Christmas. Very enjoyable Christmas. Here's Father Christmas on Christmas Day, ready to go for his round of golf, and no doubt a swim afterwards, but he'd have to juggle certain things for that. Even on Bondi Beach, people would come down on Christmas Day with their turkey dinners and try to get a bit of shade and enjoy their turkey roast lunch on the beach, Bondi Beach, watching the fake snow and the artificial lights on their Christmas tree. E is for elves. Elves started off rather badly, actually. They in Viking mythology, that's Norse mythology, the dark elves lived in a place called Svartalheim, and they inflicted nightmares on people. There's a nightmare here in this painting, poking his head through the canvas on the left. They were really rather horrible. They became rather more respectable with a story written by Louisa May Alcock in 1850. It was called Christmas Elves. It was about elves, kind little elves running around helping Father Christmas. She didn't publish the story, she just wrote it. But the story was picked up by a magazine, Goody's Ladies' Book, and printed the story as The Elves' Workshop. All the jolly little elves helping Father Christmas. Their rehabilitation was complete. This is one of my favourite Christmas films, Elf. He's a dutiful, hard-working elf, although slightly over-large. Wonderful film, that Elf. F is for football. There's a number of sort of myths or stories going about concerning the First World War, which started in August, September 1914, the Great War, First World War. By Christmas, there are some stories that a truce broke out between the two sides, between the English and the Germans. Indeed, that they met together to play football. The reason why this is difficult to substantiate is that the officers come swooping in, stamped on all this bonhomie, all this true Christian Christmas spirit, and sent the soldiers back to their trenches to carry on their work of the day. So maybe there was some meeting, maybe there was an outbreak of friendliness, maybe there was some football, but it'd be very hard to prove it, really. G is for gifts. It's what Christmas is all about, isn't it? What am I going to get? Is it better than last year? What did she give me last year? And so I thought I'd have a look for some bizarre gifts. Well, I thought it would be President of the United States advertising cigarettes, sending lots and lots of boxes of cigarettes all to his friends. But I looked a bit further and found something even more bizarre, more unusual. This concerned William Sherman, one of the Civil War generals, a man whom the newspaper said was actually a little bit mad. And sometimes when you look at that face, you can believe it. But I think he was suffering from stress. And the other person involved in this strange gift is somebody who I've come to admire very greatly, Abraham Lincoln. He's probably the only real politician in the modern age, the only real person who had his people at heart. Now, this was in 1864, and Sherman had left Atlanta to march eastwards to the coast, destroying as he went, marching. But he disappeared from view. The primitive copper telegraph cables couldn't keep up with him. He went out of sight. He was lost, and nobody knew what would happen to him. Was he attacked? Was he dead? Was his army scattered? All was silence for something like 3 days. And then on Christmas Day, a telegram appeared in the White House for His Excellency, the Prime Minister, His Excellency, the President, which is how you addressed the President in those days. And this telegraph said, "I beg to present to you as a Christmas gift the city of Savannah with 150 heavy guns and plenty of ammunition, and also about 25,000 bales of cotton. W.T. Sherman, Major General." Now, if that is not a bizarre Christmas present, I don't know what is. Holidays. Hey, Christmas Day is a holiday for everybody, isn't it? It always has been. Well, not quite. These people in this New York establishment are not going to expect very much this Christmas. You see, at Christmas, the family, the important people, are going to need extra special help, especially with the feeding, the Christmas pudding and everything. Everybody was going to need more help, and somebody was going to have to keep the fires going so that the family could be accompanied. Going back to the First World War, much of this died out because of that war and the egalitarian spirit that was developed. It's in the bleak midwinter, a personal indulgence. I love this song. Is it a hymn? Is it a carol? I don't know. But it is a beautiful piece of music and beautiful words. They seem to evoke the cold, not the midwinter, the cold, and the damp and the snow. It was written by a poetess, a lady, Christina Rossetti, one of the so-called pre-Raphaelite sect. Here is a painting of her as the Virgin Mary with Gabriel, Mrs. Gabriel, back again to announce the happy event, bearing a lily, the sign of purity. This painting was by her brother, Dante, again another pre-Raphaelite painter. And the music was by no less a person than Gustav Holst. How could it go wrong? How could it miss? Words by a superb poetess, music by a superb musician. In the bleak midwinter is something very special. J is for jello or jelly. After the Second World War, we children had a fairly grim time. Things were grim in Britain as we tried to recover from the effects of the war. And many firms, like this brewery, at Christmas gave a party for the children of their workers. And one of the things you got at this party was of course jello. Now, fortunately, things are a lot happier these days, and children get more than just jelly for Christmas. But I've observed a very strange phenomenon on board ship. Both the Viking and other lines, they have an afternoon tea. Put out lots of light stuff for us to eat. And I've seen several old ladies come staggering in, sometimes on the arm of equally old ladies staggering in. And their little eyes right up. Jelly, they say. And I always say, I haven't had jelly since I was a girl. And they fall to and sate themselves on this unusual Christmas feast. Jello. What happens to people's brains at Christmas? I don't know. There's an outbreak of strange outfits, knitted pullovers, silly Christmas gear. Elves and Father Christmases abound everywhere. You find them. I don't know what gets into people. They all have to have Christmas knitted jerseys. Remember Colin Firth, The Secret Diary of Bridget Jones? He and Bridget Jones had to share similar knitted garments. And this is a silly fashion that has spread even to space. Into space. Here is a Star Trek team, not looking very happy, but all bearing deliberate and very carefully crafted Christmas design jerseys. What a picture, eh? L is for lights. Christmas is a time of lights. It is for lights. And yet one of the traditions associated with Christmas is not Christian at all, but is a pagan tradition that comes from the south coast of the Baltic, the cold, wet forests of Germany. Christmas really ought to be on the 21st of December, because 21st of December is the winter solstice. It is the shortest day of the year, and on the next day the sun should start coming back. To encourage him to come back, these pagans lit a large log, the Yule log it was called, to welcome back the sun, to encourage him back. We still have the Yule log, although it is somewhat shrunk in size, but equally delicious, especially the chocolate. Lovely. Yule logs, Christmas. Well, we bedeck the streets at Christmas. We have lights everywhere. Lights on the houses as well. Some people seem to be a little bit over enthusiastic about this. Have you ever wondered who has the most lights on their house? Well, there's a competition, you see. There is, there was an American winner a few years ago. Then it went to Australia with 500,000 lights, and now it's back into New York. The record for lights on a domestic house is over 600,000 lights. So much of it that is spread over 2 acres. Wow, there's some lights for you. M is for Magi. Well, here is a typical scene. Pre-Raphaelite again. There are 3 worthy creatures. Is that middle one wearing a crash helmet, perhaps? Anyway, coming to welcome the new prince, the new Jesus, the Christ. But sometimes they are major. Sometimes they are wise men. Now, to the east of the Holy Land is Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers of Tigris and Euphrates. And from 8000 BC, the Sumerians, there's been a whole series of civilizations who have been very, very interested in the stars. So it's not surprising, it's quite likely that 3 wise men, 3 magi from the east, saw the star and came to find out what it was all about. But sometimes they're not magi, they're kings, 3 kings. This gorgeous, highly coloured version by Fabriano. The king in the middle hasn't got a crash helmet, but he is taking off his crown to cast it at the feet of the infant Jesus. Monty Python, of course, had his own take on the 3 wise men, the 3 magi. Who knows how they are? Monty Python. N is for Nutcracker. The Nutcracker ballet was written by Tchaikovsky towards the end of his life. And in fact, the premiere was in 1892. It has become the Christmas ballet, and is still performed regularly at Christmas. Here is the version from Atlanta, 2013. A very graceful, elegant version. And here is the English National Ballet of 2014. I believe they're going to try, despite COVID, to put something on this year. O is for office parties. Going back to the correct date of Christmas as the 21st of December, the Romans had a festival called the Saturnalia. Oh, it was a wild one. It lasted several days, actually. Some days to get over it, I suppose. And people changed how they looked. The masters dressed up as slaves, the slaves dressed up as masters, men dressed up as women, and vice versa. And a great time was had by all. It's very difficult, actually, to find a picture to show you that was suitable for public exhibition, actually, Saturnalia. But it's possible that this goes back a very, very long way. The Romans were not very religious, but they were very superstitious. And the 21st of December, being the dead mid of winter, was a time when evil spirits might very well walk abroad. They might very well come for you. So you change the way you look. Masters dressed as slaves and slaves dressed as masters. Perhaps that's why people dress up at Christmas with silly costumes. Office parties are a chance for the bosses to embarrass us all. They do this in England, and they do it in America. The embarrassment of Christmas parties. P is for perfect ornament placement disorder. This is possibly a disease, worse than COVID, which is spreading all around the Atlantic, which actually comes from space. Here is Star Trek again. The Doctor, an ordinary human being, thinks the tree looks perfect. The captain is a little bit worried, and Mr. Spock is going to put it all right. The placement of these ornaments is illogical. Clusters of red large gaps. I shall formulate an equation to optimize the festive beauty of this tree, and that's the problem. It's not just collecting masses of ornaments. We all do that. We all go over the top of Christmas. It's placement, it's replacement, it's changing, it's reorganizing, endlessly trying to get it just right. A terrible affliction. But all is not lost. All is not lost. You could get from Amazon this sweatsuit. I suffer from POPD. It's coming out. It's coming out of the closet. It's kind of Alcoholics Anonymous for these people from the ornament placement disorder. So you can wear one of these in perfect understanding that you'll meet friends and they will help you to get over this terrible affliction of ornament placement. Q is for Quality Street. Quality Street, which was the invention of a man called Macintosh, Toffee King, in the 19th century. You see, chocolates were rat chocolates were very, very expensive. They were deliberately expensive. They were made of very rare ingredients. They were a conspicuous consumption item. They were only for the very, very posh. Macintosh started a craze for cheaper sweets. He used cheaper ingredients. He used caramel and toffee, so we could all have our sweets at a reduced rate. And where did he get the name from? Well, he got the name from a play, Quality Street, by J.M. Barrie, a man who wrote Peter Pan, 1901. It's a play about class, as you might guess. And Macintosh not only stole the title, he stole two of the main characters and put them as a sort of feature on his tins, and he called them Miss Sweetly, Major Quality. At Christmas, Macintosh does away with his design and produces a number of octagonal Christmas designs for us all to enjoy the sweets, the goodies of Christmas. This is a warning. It's a warning. I've got to give you a warning. R is for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You may be tempted to do something on this line, dress up as Rudolph, sing the songs, that sort of thing. But please be aware, this was originally a book by Robert L. May, 1939, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but the copyright is held by the Rudolph Company. So, if you go around singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer songs, particularly if you dress up, you may leave yourself open to litigation from the Rudolph Company. You might be far safer just restraining yourself to Richard the Red-Nosed Robin, and he's pretty safe. S is for snow. Christmas and snow go together. I've been in Georgia and seen Christmas cards with snow on it. Torrid weather. I love this photograph. It's from 2004. It's in Vienna, but it looks Victorian. It looks evocative. It looks strange. What is going on in this drawing? Snow, wonderful snow. It's not always so wonderful. Here is a crash in Budapest for a change. Budapest motorway, 2015 crash. But on the whole, snow is beautiful, and there are times at Christmas when it is even more beautiful. This is Salzburg. It is absolutely unbelievable. It's gorgeous. It's wonderful. Surely this has been created by Walt Disney himself. It's pretty enough during the summer, but in the winter with the snow, it becomes magical. You'd expect princes and elves to be riding about, and wicked witches. Speaking of which, if you're in Austria, in the Tyrol at Christmas, be very, very careful, because you can run into some very strange ladies singing very strange songs. So be careful in Austria at Christmas. T is depressingly for turkey and tinsel. In the 19th century, the Christmas bird was goose. Here's a Muppet Christmas at Bob Cratchit, enjoying a lovely succulent goose. But although turkeys were discovered in the 16th century, they didn't become a major dish, particularly in Europe, until the 20th century. The bird has been fattened up, ready for the plate. it's a much larger bird than the wild turkeys that were seen in the 16th century. Tinsel. Tinsel was actually invented in Nuremberg, 1610. It was originally strips cut from a sheet of silver. Now, of course, it's plastic. And these two have been combined in a dreadful fashion into turkey and tinsel weekends. And a run up to Christmas and New Year's Day after Christmas, you can go in a coach to a rundown out-of-season hotel, usually on the coast, and there you can feast yourself on old turkey and tinsel. It is very, very exciting. Everybody loves it and becomes very, very happy and joyous. Turkey and tinsel, a popular pre-Christmas treat. Not sure about that. U is for under the Christmas tree. What do we find under the Christmas tree? Of course, presents. Presents. Lots and lots of presents under the Christmas tree. Oh, look. Here's a kitten. Ah, bless. Cats get everywhere, don't they? But if you want to relax with a good book, Love Under the Christmas Tree, a romance for Christmas under the Christmas tree, you can get this book from Amazon for your Kindle, and you can enjoy a quiet hour or so away from the family reading this lovely story. Under the Christmas tree. Love Under the Christmas Tree. How lovely. Spiky, but lovely. V is for Viennese whirls. I don't know why they call them Viennese whirls. It doesn't do with Vienna. In any case, in the European Union, they're regarded as biscuits. And this introduces a very serious affair, because in Austria, coffee and cake is not to be taken lightly. Coffee and cake is something very, very serious. It takes a lot of effort to deal with two of these Viennese cakes with your coffee. A lovely, lovely Christmas feast. W is for White Christmas. White Christmas. It's a song that comes from a film called The Holiday Inn, which was made in 1954, and it made, in the first year, it was shown $12 billion, which is 100 million today. Very, very popular. Here are the 4 stars: Vera Ellen, Rosemary Clooney, Dave King, and Bing Crosby. The problem is that Vera Ellen couldn't sing. So all her songs were actually dubbed by a lady called Trudy Stevens and Rosemary Clooney, who at times sings duets with herself. I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas is the best-selling single of all time. It sold over 50 million copies. This version is from 1942. Very popular song. X is for Kai. Kai. You've seen Xmas, haven't you? This is a medieval shorthand, because it takes not an X but a Kai from the beginning of the Greek title for Jesus, the Christos. It looks like an X, but is in fact pronounced Chi for Christos. The R, the P looks like an R. Sorry, the P, what looks like a P is an R. It sounded like Christos. In 312, the Constantine wished to make himself emperor, so he attacked the sitting incumbent Maxentius and was going to meet him for the battle of the Milvian Bridge. And Constantine thought he needed a bit of help, so he prayed to God. And God said to him, if he was a sophisticated Roman, speaking Greek, en toto nika. If you're speaking Latin, you would say in hoc signo vinces. Or for the benefit of English-speaking people everywhere, in this sign, conquer. The thing is, the sign that Constantine would have been given was not a cross or a crucifix. That was still a tremendous stigma attached to that at the time. No, what it would have been was a symbol made up of the first two letters of that Greek title for Jesus, the Christos. The X of Chi and the P shape for rho, giving you the Chi Rho symbol. Here's an example from early Christian times from Britain. You can see it's Jesus because he's got the Christos symbol behind him. This is a very Roman Christmas Christ. He is clean shaven, a bit plump, and he wears a toga. This is the earliest known depiction of Christ. It's from Syria, 235 AD. You probably can't see it very well, I'm afraid. It's very faded. There's the epileptic taking up his bed and walking, Christ at the top, but you could just about make out the fact that he's wearing a toga and he is clean shaven. It wasn't until about the 6th century that we got the Christ that we know today. Christ with a beard, wearing a rather shapeless robe. This is something called a Christ Pantocrator, Christ the all-powerful, Christ the Creator. You'll find it in, I think, probably all Greek Orthodox churches, certainly most of them. And he's giving a secret symbol with his right hand. What's important is the lower two fingers touching the thumb. This was a coded message. It reinforces the idea of the Trinity, that God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit were all coeval. They all existed together at the same time. It was to counter a heresy that was the Manichaean heresy, which said that God created Christ. So here you get not only a powerful figure of Christ, you get a reinforcement of a message of the Trinity. Why? It's for yesterday. Christmas is very big on nostalgia. It's not just nostalgia for a past that probably never was, of snow that wasn't cold, of cheerful people, no beggars. It influences films like It's a Wonderful Life, that extraordinary film. The elements of Christmas are all nostalgic, looking backwards. Probably the chap who's most responsible for this is Charles Dickens. This is the Christmas of Dingley Dell with wonderful people. This is Mr. Fezziwig Dance's Christmas celebration. And Dickens said that it probably arose from fond delusions of our childish days. Pickwick Papers and Dingley Dell, a version of Christmas that never was. Z or Z is for Omega. Well, the Latin alphabet may very well end up with Z or Z, but the Greek alphabet ends up with Omega. Omega is the last letter. The Roman Empire grew so large that it began to be administered in two halves. There was the western half, the Roman Empire, the Roman Western Empire, where they spoke Latin, and the eastern half, from Constantinople, sometimes Byzantium, now Istanbul, was the Greek half. It never did stop speaking Greek, the star in the bottom is the Holy Land, and if Jesus knew any classical language, it would have been Greek, not Latin particularly. Remember, the New Testament is written entirely in Greek. Paul's letters, the Acts of Apostles, are all in Greek. And this political split has led to a religious split that we still have. We still have a Western Latin Christianity based at Rome, and we have an Eastern Orthodox religion in Greece and Russia, based still Constantinople, actually. Here's a coin of one of Constantine's successors. It's got the chiron on it, and in the circles you can see on the left a stylized alpha, on the right an omega, a different form of the omega, looks like a W. Where did this come from, the alpha and the omega? It comes from a quote in Revelations. Ego to alpha, kai to omega, said Jesus. I am alpha and I am omega. I am the beginning and the end. And the end is my beginning. Beginning is my end. So, excuse me. May I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a healthy New Year and the joy of a new beginning. Thank you.